Let's talk briefly about sanctification. How is Christ's resurrection his sanctification in historia salutis? And how does that connect to and relate to our sanctification and the twofold aspect of it, the irreversible condition we enter into when we believe?
Yeah. Westminster Larger Catechism 75 is just beautiful because it frames sanctification in terms of the Spirit uniting to Christ and applying the death and the resurrection of Christ to believers. I think the clearest biblical text for this about the historian ordo is Romans 6:10 and Romans 6:11.
That's not about our justification?
No, we're in a different benefit. But the death Jesus died, he died to sin once and for all. The life he lives to God. That is a one-sentence summary or a one-verse summary of his two estates. His death, which was a death to sin. His life, which is a life to God. And without getting into too many details, that when Jesus died to sin as a sinless, sin-bearing substitute, he left behind forever the world that is dominated by sin. He left behind its judicial consequences. He left behind its enslaving power. And the life that he lives to God in heavenly places seated at his right hand. And so you can think of his death as being translated out of this world, his life being translated into the world to come. And Paul then reasons in the very next verse, in the same way, consider yourselves dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Here's the slight difference. In the 6:10 sense of the historia salutis, there's a historical sequence of before and after, where Jesus dies to sin on earth, then lives to God as raised and ascended in heaven. When we're united to Christ, the Spirit applies the efficacy of both the death and the resurrection of Jesus to us simultaneously, distinctly, inseparably, and simultaneously. The best way I know how to put it, briefly, best amplification, is that in Galatians 1:4, amplifying Romans 6:11a, by his death, Jesus has delivered us out of this present evil age. It's like the Exodus out of Egypt.
Yeah.
It's like the
Historia
Exodus.
salutis.
Historia salutis,
And you
right?
see how it's repeated for individuals in ordo.
Exactly. And it takes us up, and it affects in us now, joined to him, a deliverance out of this world, an exodus that moves from Jerusalem to heaven, if you use Luke 9:31. And then, so we are disenfranchised from this world as we're conformed to the cross and suffering of Jesus, Philippians 3:10. But secondly, in 1 Peter 1, 3 through 5, by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the church, believers, have been given new birth unto a living hope and into a kingdom that cannot perish, spoil, or fade, reserved in heaven. So that the resurrection of Christ doesn't translate out of this age, it translates you into the age to come. And the efficacy of his death delivers you out of this evil age, conforms you to his obedience and suffering. The resurrection translates you into heaven and conforms you to his joy and glory at the same time. And so to be sanctified is to know the power of the resurrection, to know the power of the cross, as they're working distinctly, inseparably, and simultaneously in you, as you're being disenfranchised from this world in cross-bearing obedience, and enfranchised into the world to come, knowing the joy and the life and the glory and the comfort of the ascended Christ. Mm-hmm. That is, instead of sanctification just being getting more holy or something, it's so much more robust than that.